So what is it about an airplane that makes things really uncomfortable? You sit down and you're crammed right next to a stranger in a seat that seems to have gotten smaller since the last time you rode on an airplane. And it's hot because they haven't turned the air conditioning on yet. Maybe the plane's 30 minutes late and you're sitting waiting to go somewhere and you paid hundreds or maybe thousands of dollars to get somewhere, and maybe you want to go there and maybe you don't. And the person sitting next to you turns and says, "So what do you do?" Now, I imagine for some of you, it's fun to have that conversation, and if you're a minister, that's the question that we dread. Because it either ends up that someone really nice, who's very curious and interested, wants to have a thoughtful dialogue for the next few hours, or someone's not, and they want to tell you all about it. Either they're really religious, or they're really not, but they want you to know. It's for this reason that some of us craft secret identities when we travel. I heard a story. I don't always get my sermon illustrations from the Trinity Broadcasting Network. Sometimes I do. And today, I heard a story a couple of weeks ago from this guy named J. John. He's a worldwide evangelist. It's what he does. And he said that he was traveling the other day from Heathrow Airport to somewhere. And he said he knows that when you answer the question, "What do you do?" by saying, "I'm a pastor," it goes any of those ways. That people have all these connotations with it. So he said he turned to the woman who asked him the question, "What do you do?" And he said to her first, "What do you do?" And she explained, and he said, "Where are you going?" She said, "I'm going to Singapore." And he said, "Well, great, I'm going to Australia." She said, "Well, what do you do?" And he said, "Well, I am part of a global enterprise. We have outlets in nearly every country on the planet Earth and on almost every continent. We have hospitals, hospices, schools, homeless shelters, feeding program, educational programs for families and children. We do marriage work. We do justice making and restoration of communities. We work for the environment and the care of the poor. We care for human beings from the time they're born to the time we die, and our focus is comprehensive meaning making and human behavioral management." And she went, "Wow!" Wow, so loud that everyone on the plane turned around, and she said, "What's it called?" And he said, "It's called the church." Think of the difference between the way he explained that and, "I'm a pastor." I wish that we had like 10% of that in the way that we explain what we're doing here, because we could give just as robust an answer. What I do know is that how you understand the self that you're putting out into the world makes a tremendous difference. And how you see your sense of mission and purpose, it affects how much you impact the world and the lives of others. This year in church, we're asking, how do we build heaven on earth? And we're wrapping up that question this Sunday before the summer starts. How do we build heaven on earth? And like it or not, we are the primary resource we own. If we can say we even own ourselves. We are the primary resource we have. So what do you have? If somebody asked you that question on an airplane or at a diner or waiting at a bus stop, how would you describe the resource you have to build heaven on earth? I mean, you. I think a lot of us, over the course of our lifetimes, and especially those of us in more conventional careers or even in ministry, we go to trainings where we learn about our principal mission statements and elevator pitches. We even have a class here to teach you how to do that for the church. We craft the self-identity over years and years. But I have rarely stopped in my life to find out who I was by asking somebody else. By saying, "This is who I think I am. Is that who I am?" That example in the reading from this morning by that man Hal Elrod made me kind of shudder when I read it for the first time, because I thought, oh, maybe I'll try. Never mind. It was about that long of a thought process. Here he is, this guy who feels down on his luck. He's dissatisfied with his life. He feels like he's not being put to use. So he sends this email to 23 people from various areas of his life and says to them, please don't hold back. Let me know the 3 places where I need to improve that maybe I don't see. Would you do that? I wouldn't. I haven't. Maybe I'll try it. Strangely enough, by complete coincidence, and possibly this is just the way the Spirit moves, I got an email this week from a friend saying that exact same thing. I've been planning on using that reading for weeks. This person had no clue. And she sent me an email that said, I value your opinion. You've been really good at telling me when I'm succeeding or failing, when we're doing well or not. Would you take a few minutes to write me an email and let me know how I can improve? I was stunned. How terrifying. And what courage it must have taken to turn that lens around from this is who I think I am, this is who I think I am, this is who I pretend I am for all of you. Who am I? Or at least, how am I being received by the world? Because this year in church with that question, how do we build heaven on earth with the selves we have, not the selves we wish we had, the selves we have? What we never asked all year was, how will we know if it's working? How will we know? I can try and be a better husband or minister. We can try to be a better church, but how would we know? Our sense of self is so distorted, and the labels that we use are so insufficient. Son, minister, husband, dad, friend, human. I'm only going to be human for a little while. The atoms in my body have already been millions of other things. Earthworms and tyrants and park benches. One day there'll be giraffes and pianos, garbage. The very building blocks of what I call Aaron have been and will be a million things. But feedback as a theological tool asks us to admit that maybe we're not the center of the observable universe. I mean, to me, literally, I am the center of the observable universe, but it asks me to pretend as if there might be another set of eyes or ears, another being anywhere. For us, in this tradition, we've inherited this long-standing religious tradition which has said to be a human is good. We've reflected on that this year a couple of times. Our religious ancestors have said that to be human means that you are infused with something decent and holy and profound, that you cooperate with the divine itself, that if you were seen, really seen, you would be loved. Or at least that a human would be loved. And it's one thing for me to think that in the abstract. Humans participate in the divine, are infused with the holy, and when known, are loved. It's another thing to start talking about specific people. You. And you. And you and me. What would happen if we were seen exactly as we were? I think it matters, whether you're a theist or an atheist, what you think God thinks of you. You, just as you are. I know people who long to be seen by a loving God in their life because the human encounter they experience doesn't match that. Or people who are afraid to be seen by anything we would call God. Think of how often God, in traditional religious terminology, gets confused with Santa. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good. Unless you'll go to hell. The notion that out there, the one who would see all, if it saw us, is keeping track. That's a frightening notion. At least it is for me, because I know where I messed up. Our Universalist ancestors took a different route, and they said, if you were seen exactly as you are, God would love you so fiercely that you couldn't escape God even if you wanted to. They were kind of predestinationists that way. And it matters. Theist or non-theist. The thought experiment, if I were seen exactly as I am, what would that mean? The first page of my copy of the Bible has that Adam and Eve story in it, which is a great example of whatever the authors thought the answer to that question was. Because at the moment they become self-aware, the moment that these prototypical human beings see their own flesh and each other's, the first thing they do is run and hide behind a bush. Cover their bodies, hide from their God, and then the man blames it on a woman. And that's page 1 of the book. Their response, or at least the author's response to what would happen if I were seen exactly as I am is, oh no. I would have to be filled with shame and alone. It matters what you think God thinks of you. Or if you're not a theist, it matters what you think would happen if you were seen exactly as you are. There's some good neuroscience being done, MRI scans on the brains of thoughtful prayers. People who are praying either to a loving God or a vengeful God. The people who pray to a loving God over the course of months develop more activity in parts of the brain associated with compassion, forgiveness, self-awareness, and others. Literally, the roads between their understanding of self, other, and good are being paved. They report that the world is a place they can trust, and that other people can be trusted and loved. The people who pray to a spiteful and vengeful, punishing God have the areas of their brain light up between punishment, hate, fear, anger, and themselves. You won't be surprised to learn that they report that the world can't be trusted, that other people have to earn love and trust. What you think, the universe, God, reality, thinks of you and how often you practice stepping into that literally changes your brain and your ability to stare back out at the world and determine if it's good or not. The biggest feedback mechanism you can imagine determines whether you think you're worthy of love. Now, for most of us, I'm guessing in this community, our conception of God, and mine included, isn't a person who doles out reward. And when I say a loving God, I don't even really mean a person who loves, but it's the best language I have at matching that. But I learn about that most often in human relationships. My guess is that for most of you, theist or non-human relationships are the most common and probably most difficult place where you find out how you're doing. I've heard people say all the time that they wish they were the person that their dog thought they were. My guess is that's because sometimes people can be really hard on us. And we on them. It doesn't just matter what you think God thinks of you, what the Holy's feedback would be. It matters the community that you form to see you. It matters that you chose to be in church. A church that's willing to ask hard questions. It matters that you're not watching alone from a computer. Or if you are watching this next week on video, find somebody else too. Because a human community is evidence that you're not the center of the universe. It's evidence that you have a profound impact whether you want to or not. The evidence of living and working with difficult people is that the difficult person never knows they're the difficult person. Which means, by definition, you're somebody's difficult person. It's humbling. The richest communities we can form are kind of like the richest notions of God we can think of. They are able to see and experience us just as we are and love us, not just because of that, but even more. And just like the richest notions of God, while they love us just as they are, they don't shy away from telling us that there's something else we could do and be. The richest communities can love us as we are and say, I also know you're capable of so much more. And that's really hard to build. I hope that you seek feedback as a theological tool in your life. I understand that by preaching the sermon, I'm inviting some, myself, and that's okay. But I hope you see it as a theological tool. Because if you have probably one life, and you don't get to choose to be a different person before it's over, and you don't get to decide how many days left there are, and they're numbered, then you are the biggest resource you have for building heaven wherever you go. The only way to find out how it's going is to ask. Your employees, your friends, your partner, your spouse, your church, your students, your teachers, your customers. How am I doing at building heaven wherever I go? I hope that in this place you experience moral integrity. We're not going to do it perfectly. I promise. I hope that you learn to experience a life from us and with us where the self that you believe you are matches the one that the world encounters most of the time. And I hope that you experience the best of what we would hope from a God in this place. That you would have tangible, felt moments of being loved just as you are, and that if you stick around, sometime somebody's going to say, I love you, and here's somewhere where you can be even more. Because in this life, you are called to be nothing less than who you are. And never anything more. May it be so, this day and all days. Amen.